Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Paul's Monday Market Update, number 230 in for Monday, 6th of July, 2026. I hope you're all well. I hope you've had a good weekend. I hope you're sort of not too bleary-eyed and struggling for those of you like myself who stayed up to watch that football match last night. So it was worth it. I'm glad that it was not only was it a good result, but it was actually a great game to watch and stuff. And so I can live with that. All right, I would have been a bit different had I just stayed up all that time to watch a 0-0 ball draw. But anyway, we go on. Paul's Monday Market Update. Okay, if you're here in the room, I hope you can hear me. Hope you can see the slides. Okay, and that the technology is working fine for us. Those of you joining us for the first time, the Monday Market Update is just that. It is me flying through as much as I can cram into the next 25-30 minutes, looking at strength and weakness within the FX markets, looking at a few charts of interest, and then a look at the live markets. It is not a signal service. It's not trade recommendations. It's just me sharing what I'm looking at, which may help you with your own analysis. As always, you are very welcome here, but just remember you're always responsible for your own trading and investing decisions. And as always, if you want a little bit of help and support, we're about to start the Q3 VTP Trader Accountability Group. All right, so just a small group that helps you build discipline, accountability, and consistency. Okay, with other serious, dedicated traders. Once again, there's a bit.ly code there or a QR code, or you can ping me if you've got any questions. Okay, so here we are. So these are, bring up that drawing tool. These are kind of indices commodities. So what have we got here? Dow on the weekly, NASDAQ on the weekly, SP 500 on the weekly, Russell on the weekly, FTSE on the weekly, Nikkei weekly, DAX weekly, oil weekly. Okay, so we've just looked at gold, Bitcoin. All right, okay, they have, like oil, been in that downtrend for the last few months. They're beneath their 50-period moving average. Oil has kind of been mincing around here around about $70 area, okay, region, right? So is that an indication, of will we see a further move lower in that, okay? Or is this somewhere where it's just going to find support and bounce like Bitcoin and gold based upon what the dollar does, all right? So that's what we're looking at with that. The reason I'm interested in the American indices at the moment is kind of a little bit of a breakdown of the nice correlation they've had. If we look at Dow closed at all-time highs on the weekly, okay? Russell, okay, has continued to sort of work its way. It's a bit of a doji for last week. But when I look at S&P 500, well, we pushed away up, put in that engulfing candle, key reversal candle, and then we've started to kind of form lower highs, all right, on that. And is that a case of, once again, this is just a bit of profit taking after that fantastic run for before we go into the summer lulls, or is this indicative of something bigger? Is this indicative of a kind of a rotation story that is going on? When we look at, let's say, NASDAQ, it becomes, I think, even more pronounced. Having had that fantastic bounce here for the 50-period moving average, we ran just beautifully. We then printed this bang, big bearish engulfing candle, key reversal candle, and then we've kind of formed almost this double top here, haven't we? All right, last week, yep, we had a bullish close, but it's kind of like still an inside candle. And when I go down to the daily chart, what I see is that daily chart is we're kind of sat on that 50. That's the way I look at that. All right, that's what I'm looking at here. And let's just, so me, and this is a bit of a scruffy sort of trend line here. So as I said, you can draw it better than me, but I wonder is this a case of, is this a case of we are just coiling up here? Okay, we're coiling up. All right, now, admittedly, we could be coiling up because it's just a plateau after the fantastic run we had. Is this just an indication of, summer lulls, okay? People are taking the profit and then clearing off for July and August. And if you've had a really good year, why wouldn't you? All right, why wouldn't you? Or is this more indicative of kind of unease, all right, about people basically maybe rotating out of some of those AI, tech stocks, semiconductor stocks, which have done so brilliantly, into elsewhere. Okay, and that's the kind of theme we've sort of been talking about going on there. But at the moment, as I said, looking at that, that's kind of intriguing, and I'll be looking to see, does that daily 50 on the Nasdaq, does it hold, or does it roll and break, or does it act as support and we go like the DAX and blow higher? All right, so that's what I'm watching there at the moment. And as I said, part of that is because what we have seen here is bang, this is the DAX. Okay, the DAX on the weekly chart. You've heard me say that really, DAX had always been struggling. Whenever it got above this 25,000 level, it kind of struggled, didn't really sort of do it with any kind of conviction. And that is until last week. Bang, look at there, look at the way we've pumped high there. Okay, and that's closed at all-time highs there on the DAX. So I think part of that is kind of, you're looking at like kind of cheaper oil prices. You're looking at maybe a kind of a little subsidence or an ebb of some of that kind of war mantra, all right, that we've had for most of this particular year. A few other elements. I think also the Miss Lagarde, originally was talking about, I think, about kind of 3 interest rate hikes for Europe, but actually now it's looking like, well, there might be one in September, and that'll be it done. Okay, so the kind of inflation fears are cooling a little bit as well. So that kind of has sort of demonstrated its giddiness in the DAX. But as you see that's a really quite a strong move, that isn't it? Really very strong move. Okay, that is how that has followed through on that. A little bit closer to home, FTSE. As we said, I've been talking about how I thought it was coiling up there, a little bit like what we're seeing Nasdaq do now, and we've kind of worked our way higher out of that. Okay, we're closing weekly highs above the 20, above the 50, above the 200. I look at that as it kind of works its way. When I look at the daily chart, I wouldn't exactly say it fills me with joy. It doesn't exactly say, oh yeah, Paul, got to get myself a bit of that. There's nothing really there screaming out at me. That's more of a grind. But once again, we're still above the 20, which is acting as dynamic support, which is above the 50, which is above the 200. So it is grinding its way. All right. And I stick to this, is that I think anything to do with the UK is all predicated on, who does Burnham chooses as Chancellor. That's going to be an interesting choice that everybody's interested in. So that's what we see there. We've already looked at gold and Bitcoin, haven't we? But let's go silver. All right, just to do that. Silver, bang. Listen, not massively dissimilar to gold and Bitcoin. Okay, in a strategic sell environment. Last week was a bullish inside bar at $60, but beneath the 50. Listen, for me, for it to be bullish, it needs to get above that 50, probably above the 70 and above the 20, really, for me to say, do you know what, there's a real weekly bullish trend. Or it pops up and then it rolls over and falls away, and that will be the interesting thing. So certainly on that daily chart, I look at that, they're kind of those lows they're all getting higher, aren't they? Those lows are getting higher. It's whether bang, can it get above that daily 20, and in which case can it get up to, look at this area here on the daily chart. You've got the $70 area, the 50 and the 200. I think if we can break that and get up there, that becomes the kind of area of interest. Okay, the decision point. So that's what we'll watch on that. So, and as I said earlier, a lot of that is all based upon the story with the dollar. All right, and listen, the story of the dollar is the story of Vosh and the Fed and what they're going to do. Hence why the meeting minutes on Wednesday will be keenly anticipated and keenly sort of poured over. All right, so this is my dollar profile. So Aussie on the daily, Euro on the daily, Pound on the daily, dollar Swiss, okay, Kiwi dollar, dollar CAD, dollar yen, okay. So even if we just look at that, all right. So the last couple of weeks, kind of Euro, okay, has taken a little bit of joy out of the dollar. Certainly has pound, okay. Dollar's weakened against a little bit of the Swiss franc, even the Aussie, even the Kiwi, okay, all right, has taken a little bit. Not so much on the CAD, but remember CAD's at the bottom. Yen, well, yen is just a basket case. I'm going to look at that separately in a minute anyway, all right. So, but you can see what's going on there on the daily chart over the last week or two. Certainly, if we go to the dollar index, okay, so dollar index on the weekly chart, we are still in a bullish uptrend. We are still above 100. We're still above those recent highs. But what we're looking at is last week is, having on the daily chart, having found beautiful support, dynamic support for that 20 period moving average, popped away high. But as you can see for yourself, okay, we're kind of over those last sort of, what's that, about 7, 8 trading days. We've kind of drifted low, and I think you're already, as I said, you're looking at the those NFP job numbers kind of, just they kind of tempered the giddiness that was with the kind of interest rate hike story and stuff, and that's what we were seeing there. We've bounced off that kind of 20 period moving average there, okay, and the question is, is that going to hold us up there? Certainly on the 4 hour chart, what we have done is, you can see, we this week, having finished last week on that kind of double bottom, the 4 hour chart, we've kind of, there's been a bit of strong dollar going into the start of the week on that. The question is, will that hold? Okay, is this a little bit of a pump before the minutes dump? That's what I think a lot of people might be particularly looking at and watching at.